So for today's webinar, we're going to cover two topics this time. We're going to cover inhuman friendships and imagination. Inhuman friendships means friends who aren't really human. In other words, such as here's a few examples: stuffed animals. There's also actual animals. Toys can also be inhuman friendships. Cartoon characters, video game characters, which are kind of sort of the same thing if you think about it, and even something from the computer as well. Or one other inhuman friendship can also be your own creation, which develops the topic of imagination.
What did that mean to have a friend that really wasn't like a human friend, right? Why was that important for you?
Now, the way I see friendships are someone that you look up to, someone that you can relate to, someone that can also, in a way, be like you. And back then when I was very little, I didn't really quite know the difference between fantasy and reality. Human friendships and inhuman friendships. So with inhuman friendships, it feels more natural. It feels more right. The colors and all these kind of things going on, and for one thing, I just felt more relatable when I see animals, particularly.
This was your foundation. You talked about not really being able to tell the difference between reality and fantasy.
I always thought fantasy and reality are exactly the same thing. Whether you're watching a cartoon or watching a video game or anything like that, I always thought they're exactly the same as reality. Growing up and such. In fact, I was a big fan of Popeye and Felix the Cat and such, and I used to think that I was able to communicate and talk to them.
So do you still prefer kind of the inhuman friendships over the regular friendships even now?
I kind of prefer human friendships because, they're real and they're so unexpected. I always say to myself, I'm always so fascinated about people. They've always got stories to tell. They always got their own imagination, and oftentimes, almost all the time, I see most of these people as graphic novel worthy because of the stories that they have to share.
Why did you decide that, man, I need to start trying to pursue human friendships versus the inhuman ones? Like, when did that happen and how did that happen?
So when I was 17 years old, you're at that point where you want to in a way kind of move forward and try to expand on your own friendships, I guess you can say, than just the ones that you're so used to.
This difference between fantasy and reality and your imagination, was that also why sometimes you would just kind of like check out, like you would just go off into space, as well? Tell us about how imagination helped you and how imagination hindered you.
Imagination is much more comfortable if it's being kept by yourself. You don't really need to share your imagination with others. If you do, it feels weird. It feels off. It feels like people won't understand you and people will be afraid of you. I believe this is what I think is that the mind, in that imaginary part, is still slowly trying to develop pictures and slowly trying to develop sound. You may see things that aren't there, maybe even hear things that aren't really there. It's the whole concept of being in your own world, where you think that you've heard something, or you think that's what it means, but it's really not true.
When you were growing up, you didn't know sometimes what was imaginary versus what was real.
Pretty much exactly right. It was hard to kind of just process that as well.
How did you start identifying what was imaginary and what things were real or tangible?
One thing that helped me a whole lot was from this program called Jumpstart, and Jumpstart it had a little section about, okay, is this fact or opinion, or is it real or is it fantasy? And along with that, the speech therapist, the parapros, did something almost exactly the same thing when it comes to this concept, except they would use real life pictures on which is fact and which is fantasy. Like, for example, Goofy from Walt Disney. That's a fictional character.
Mm-hmm.
You got okay, for example, President George Washington. That's a fact because he was a real life person.
One of the big thing in autism, right, is one of the indicators is whether or not you do pretend play, right? So like make up scenarios and do pretend play. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I had a third grade teacher. He's wonderful teacher. He's really fun. He's nice. There was one part where actually even the announcements on the ceiling mentioned that the mouse and his motorcycle is coming over to the school, and the next day, I see the third grade teacher dressed up as a mouse, and he got his red motorcycle with him. He even played as a part too, and being as the mouse. This is based on a book from an old tale known as The Mouse and the Motorcycle, and that's the part that he was on. When I saw him, I even said it out loud, and I wish I shouldn't have done that. It's like, wait a minute, you're not the mouse and such. Or, what's going on? I was very confused and kind of frustrated in my mind. It's like, what's going on? I never seen the teacher dress up as a mouse and with the motorcycle inside the building and such. And so what I did was I kind of just requested my parapro saying, "Excuse me, can I just be in the hallway, please?" Because it was just too much.
Like today, if your teacher showed up, in a mouse suit and a motorcycle, would you understand and kind of be able to pretend along with it, or would that still be confusing for you?
Oh, I'd have a blast, being in that little world. Now, because I do believe this is very important, I learned how to share my imagination with others.
So what was the strategy that you used to transform that and to start being okay with things that were out of the norm or not regular, not very, that were variable? What strategies did you use?
We all went back to the very basics of learning flexibility, saying, hey, it's okay for the teacher to do that because for one thing, he's an adult. If the adult can do this, it's totally okay. And there's a reason behind that. And one of the reasons is have fun. Have fun with the fantasy. Have fun pretending. And that's one thing that I need to work on was learning how to pretend. So what do we do? Well, we've actually learned how to have fun with others. So learn how to pretend in different worlds.
So what were some of the other strategies that taught you flexibility?
For one thing, it was the process of learning how to understand why things happen differently. There's always find ways of good intentions on why the things happen when it comes to role play, and to learn how to be true to what is going on, how to move forward. When I heard the ceiling say, the mouse and the motorcycle is coming in, I should have been more prepared when it comes to that. Even though I was reminded, I guess I could have just, been reminded multiple times saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is going to happen for a day. And, learn what you can do in a certain situation. That kind of stuff, learn how to be prepared for that kind of.
So that's definitely one of the key strategies, right, is that especially if it's going to be a new and unique situation, to do a lot of prep work up front on saying this is exactly what's going to happen, right? We do that to this day, where we'll have a new venue that you're speaking at. So we typically always go beforehand and we walk the venue and you get to take a look at it. You get comfortable. Yeah. We take you through the sequence of exactly what's going to happen, because we've just found over time that makes you much more successful, because then the environment, what the expectation is, and it really allows you to then be able to deal with the variability that goes on at the event.
I guess it's nice to just, do extra preparedness, just just until I get right to the first time all by myself.
So one of the things that you had mentioned as well that helped you with imagination and then also helped you with seeing different things in a different way was art. Can you tell us about how art played that role and how it still plays a role for you today?
Art definitely is one of the most, I think personally, one of the most powerful tools when it comes to autism, because of how visually it can be. And with art comes imagination. People have the ability to share their imagination with others. But for me, I just want to keep my imagination by myself. I just didn't want to share it, didn't even want to draw pictures of what was going on in my mind. So I didn't even want to write out loud at first, when it comes to my first years at school. Writing was definitely one of my first major big basic steps in order to share what goes on in your mind.
You created these inhuman or fantasy characters oftentimes based on real people. So you would use the imagination, and then did you start seeing the real people as imaginary? How did that connection work for you?
I know a good student who's a basketball player. He's tall. I've grown up with him during school and high school. He's managed to make straight up 3-pointers and even slam dunk the ball because he's so good. And that's the real part. The fantasy part is, I imagine him jumping 10 feet up in the air and just slam the ball so hard it catches the rim on fire. I always say to him is that great fiction is inspired because of nonfiction. Nonfiction inspires great fiction.
Right. So your writing is an art form. You've done poetry. You're big into photography. In fact, one of your recent blog posts on Autismworks, again, as a father, right? I mean, I'm constantly in awe and amazement at just how you see the world, and your photography really is extraordinary because it's just a whole different perspective. What are other ways, and what are ways that you would recommend those who have autism start to express themselves artistically?
So first off, we go to the basic parts of expressing yourself, expressing your imagination, knowing how to share it with others. There's a lot of people that are really interested in what you have to share. To be honest with you, first step is learning how to accept and how to share your imagination with others. And one key thing that I would kind of recommend is that if you like drawing, feel free to draw whatever it is. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be amateur or beginners, or it doesn't have to be professional looking, like in a graphic novel or anything like that. Just draw something. Draw whatever comes to mind. Had I known more about your drawing, had you draw more often throughout the years, I think it would have been a major improvement. But for me, it was different. And one of the other things was photography as well. And that's how you're able to express yourself, express your imagination, and how to share your imagination. And I can guarantee it can allow you to go thrive into the future once you know how to share it.
What would be some online things that people could do to express themselves art-wise? What are some of the online tools that you've used?
So me, MII, is basically what it's about is these little avatar characters that you can make, and then you can just play them on the video game. So yeah, I have made quite a bit of those me characters, over 300 of them as well. The reason why is because based on real life of people, and I do believe they all have a story to tell. I do think it can be a major breakthrough on how to communicate with others, is sharing your ideas, sharing your creation, and why you do so.
Yeah, how did you use specifically me's or other characters to help you with that?
As strange as it sounds, how weird it sounds, I guess I do need a break from humans, because of how sometimes unpredictable they can be. So yes, I guess I do need some break from humans, and prefer to be with with my inhuman friends, such as examples like toys, that I get to play around with, or the video games.
Tell us about how, because video games are a very big thing. They were a very big thing for you. It was your way to escape. It was a very predictable world. It was just like you said, you would press a button and things would happen. And it became as a real comfort zone for you. It allows you to actually be able to recharge a bit as well and get some interaction. How did you start making the distinctions around balance of the fantasy world versus reality?
So one key strategy I will say that I think is the most helpful is the red timer.
Yes, the red timer was great. Yep.
It's a square block, and there's a little timer that says 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and all the way down to 60 minutes. And the thing about this particular timer is that it's whenever you turn the dial, it is highlighted red. So like if you turn it down, like in 15 minutes, this part becomes red. And when it turns off, then that means that time is up. So that's the main thing, is that we learn the balance and learn how to, take a break from that and learn how to expand on your own imagination. In a way, introduce yourself to more friends, whether they're inhuman or not.
But what do you think would be one of the key strategies for someone, where it's very difficult for them socially, and they would much rather be in this inhuman, this world that they create? What do you think would be a key strategy for them to use to start developing an actual human friendship?
Find some friends that are also friends with inhuman friends. Like, for example, say, hey, if you're friends with Mario the Red Plumber, maybe someone else is also friends with Mario the Red Plumber, and there's like some sort of connection into that. It may sound kind of weird, but I do think it would be kind of a neat little strategy when you find someone that has that other liking as well. So that's one of the things that I think would be kind of nice, is find someone that has a bit of a liking to what you like, and learn how to engage in different areas, whether it is the fantasy world or it is not.
It's really creating those links of commonality. Well, we're at the end of our time. Any closing comments in wrapping up here, Tyler, in your webinar? It's been an absolutely fascinating topic. Thank you so much for developing it for us. I think there's some really helpful strategies and takeaways. So anything in closing that you want to share? To me, inhuman friendships are okay. It's okay to kind of introduce yourself to them, and in a way introduce others to your inhuman friendships, and learn from these either fictional characters or pets or animals and such, and also learn why they are so fascinating to them. Is it because they want to be like them? Is it because there's that they can relate it to? Is it because they want to be something that they want to become better at in the future? Whatever it is, I do think that there is some breakthroughs in order to find some correlation in these areas, and learn at the same time as saying, if you can be great friends with people that aren't real, you can also be good friends with people that are real. And as for imagination, well, it all starts with inhuman friendships. That counts as imagination, right? So once you learn how to do that and learn how to share the imagination, I guarantee you can do wonders for the future. Well, Tyler, thank you very, very much. We sure look forward to the next webinar. If you're getting benefit, of course, from these webinars, all we ask is that you share them with other people. Our goal is to, again, make autism more workable. And we do that, again, by answering questions about autism and providing answers that work. So, again, thank you very much for being with us. And we'll look forward to, Tyler, your next webinar.
All right. That'll be great. Thank you again for coming.